Guys, this story right here is exactly the reason why ESPN is failing. It's the reason why woke media is failing. Because literally everything, and I'm telling you, I have to highlight this stuff because it's to the point where it's just like, it's just ridiculous, okay? Everything they see has to be analyzed from a racial perspective, okay? I mean, like, we're talking about sports, right? We're talking about NFL. The NFL draft is coming up in a few days. Yeah, I didn't know either, right? Haven't really been keeping up with it. But, you know, I do keep up with football from afar, and I generally know what's going on, okay? Because I am a football fan, even though I haven't really watched the games. And, you know, the draft typically is one of my more favorite times of the year because you get to see which new players are going to be on your team, right? You get to hope that they're going to be superstars and lead you to the Super Bowl, right? That's just kind of how it goes. And on ESPN, they're having this discussion between Stephen A. and Max Kellerman about quarterbacks. And obviously, when it comes to quarterbacks, guys, you know, everything is racial, okay? Because that's been the only position in football that, you know, hasn't been taken over by somebody that's black. And they got to make sure all positions, right, have mostly black people, or yet there's some type of racism. That's the logic. And they're talking about Justin Fields, right, who's a top quarterback out of Ohio State. Very talented guy. And when the season was over, he was ranked number 2 behind Trevor Lawrence. Everybody knew that Trevor Lawrence was like the next Andrew Luck, okay? Like, he was going to go number 1 no matter what. So Justin Fields is behind him because at the time, you know, people think that, you know, he was the second best quarterback in terms of where they're going to go in the draft. Now, come draft time, Justin Fields has failed in the QB rankings. Nobody's saying he's not a top QB. Nobody's saying he's not a first round talent. There are just other quarterbacks that have moved ahead of him. And they happen to be white. And because of that, ESPN goes on this disgusting crusade, right? On which they're literally asking, is race the reason why Justin Fields may fall in the draft, right? Why he may not go number 2 behind Trevor Lawrence. And there's this one particular article from the Undefeated that is really disgusting, right? It just really plays into this idea that Justin Fields is experiencing some type of systemic racism in football. That's literally what it is. It victimizes somebody that's about to make millions of dollars, regardless of where he goes in the first round, because he's definitely going in the first round. And this argument is so disingenuous and it's so hideous when you consider the current state of the NFL, especially when it comes to black quarterbacks. But before I get in that, take a look at this exchange between Stephen A. and Max Kellerman on this topic.
And to go from the number 2 pick, or the number 2 quarterback rather, to number 5, where you got literally 4 quarterbacks ahead of you, I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, what the hell is going on here? So for me, the only reason I say I would have a problem, if you're telling me he's not that guy, then I want to know what the hell was everybody saying, what they said for when the college football season ended. Because they were the ones telling us, it's Trevor Lawrence, and then there's Justin Fields. And we didn't hear any of those other names. As a matter of fact, immediate speculation was that Mac Jones was going to be a middle to late first-round pick. And now we're talking about he's going number 3 overall. I got a problem with the evaluations that were evidently prematurely put out there.
Well, a lot of football people really like Mac Jones the more they look at him. And so, like you, Stephen A., I'll defer to their wisdom. But I will say this. I think what rubs people the wrong way, maybe like you, Stephen A., I know it's on my radar, is that sometimes quarterbacks rise, sometimes they fall. But what I've noticed in recent years, after decades of artificial barriers being put in place for black quarterbacks, that vis-a-vis white quarterbacks, black quarterbacks in the draft tend to fall pre-draft, their evaluations. And sometimes it's right, like Daniel Jones looks like he's going to be better than Dwayne Haskins. And sometimes it's wrong, like Mitch Trubisky is not as good as Deshaun Watson, or certainly not Patrick Mahomes, right? But I say Watson because he seemed to be the guy falling and Trubisky the guy rising, and Mahomes maybe didn't do either. But the point is, the correlation that can be made is that your status falls vis-a-vis white quarterbacks. And so that's why my antenna are up when I notice 1, 2, and 3 this year, white guy, right? But that may be correct. Like, we need to see, in the end, we need to see how these guys turn out as pros. Sure, when you survey the landscape, a lot of the recent draft picks who are top quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, I mentioned, Lamar Jackson, who went at the end of the first round, only because Ozzie Newsome picked him right. Otherwise, he's in the second round somewhere. Obviously, Dak Prescott and others. We see that draft position, a lot of times they're doing a lot better than their draft position would indicate they should be doing, and that tells me something.
All right, guys. So, as you saw there, Max Kellerman, Stephen A., you know him, right, asking the question. Max Kellerman, because he's a simp, and a super woke revolutionary, he has to go along with the race narrative, right? Even though he's acknowledging that, okay, it's probably not race, but he has to be a good woke liberal and say, oh, race may be a factor, even though he knows damn well it's not. Okay? Guys, the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, 4 out of 5 of those quarterbacks are black. 4 out of 5. They're trying to paint this narrative that the NFL is somehow racist at the quarterback position. But out of the top 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the league, 4 of them are black. Like, come on. Also, on top of that, we've seen so many black quarterbacks in the last decade either go number 1, like Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Kyler Murray, right? So many black quarterbacks in the NFL go number 1 in the draft. And we've seen black quarterbacks fall in the draft and also rise in the draft, right? Like Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love. Okay, there are plenty of quarterbacks, black quarterbacks, that go both ways, just like white quarterbacks. And every year we know why, because there are some prospects that some people think, NFL scouts think, that are going to project to be better pros than they were in college. And whether it's right or wrong, that's subjective to that team. There's no overarching conspiracy to have white quarterbacks go higher. Consider this. If you fall in the draft, right? Let's say you're a top quarterback, right? You projected to go 1 or 2 and you end up falling. Well, the further you fall, the better team you're going to go to, right? Like Lamar Jackson, for example, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. All those guys fell in the draft, and because they fell, they were able to actually go to a good team, which led them to getting paid more money in the NFL because they went to a winning team with some talent. So even if the system is racist, even if I give you that, even if it is because of race, in the long term, it actually helps black quarterbacks in terms of getting paid more and success. Because if you go to a better team and you truly have the talent, right? If you're truly meant to be a great player and you end up being a great player on a great team, you're going to win more games. And if you win more games, then yeah, you can get paid. Versus being a great player on a bad team and your career goes nowhere. Like Andrew Luck, for example. We've seen it happen all the time. And that's the way that we should have our sports analysis. You don't need race to explain this stuff. We're past that, especially when it comes to the NFL. But for some reason, these people think that whether it's being a coach, whether it's being a general manager, whether it's being an owner, whether it's being a quarterback, all those things have to be mostly black because the league is mostly black. Therefore, it's not fair. And I'm like, bruh, 75, 80, 85% of the league is already black. They're already making a ton of money collectively. So why do you feel the need to have every single position dominated by one race? Or if it's not, then it's somehow racist. That's what really kills me. And using race in arguments like this and silly conversations like this really does a disservice to real instances of racism. For all the people that are concerned about racism in this country, when you're talking about trying to fight racism, it actually makes it a lot harder for you to fight racism when you claim that everything is racist. At that point, you just become the boy that cried wolf. Nobody believes you anymore. And that's what happens in these silly conversations. It's people always crying racism for things that have nothing to do with race. But, I mean, again, there was a time in the league where the quarterback position was, mostly white. But that's not to say that, it was a race issue per se. It may have just been one of those things where maybe it was a style of play issue. Maybe it was a network issue. Maybe some of these passing camps started reaching some of these lower income communities or these black communities more because there can be more talent there. And then all of a sudden, you had black quarterbacks that came up that were actually really talented. And with the game changing to be more athletic at that position, yeah, naturally, more athletic quarterbacks, whether they're black or white, are going to take over, i.e. Josh Allen, i.e. Trevor Lawrence. This stuff is not hard, right? You have the job of a sports analyst. You should be able to analyze this stuff without using race. You should be able to explain this stuff without using race. It's not racism if Justin Fields ends up being the third or the fourth quarterback taken. Things change. If anything, it's probably better for his career. He's going to go to a better team. I hope the Panthers pick him up, right, at 8. So, it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.